Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Overwatch League fan thoughts and analysis video. Today it is for Overwatch League Season 2, Stage 3, Week 2. Before we get started, as always, let's take a look back at Week 1 of Stage 3, where there were some interesting matches. My overall record for the week was 12-4. I was 2-2 in my big pick games, and that makes my overall big pick record 25-16, and my overall record 106-50. But let's start with Thursday, June 6th, where we had the San Francisco Shock beating the Atlanta Reign 3-2, a game that I don't think anybody expected to be close at all. It was very close, very competitive, very interesting. By no means a bad match from either side. I think the Shock looked a little, like hungover in a way. Like they just came off this really good stage and they were just kind of thinking they could cruise. And the Reign played very well, and it was a surprising game, but Shock ultimately came away with the win. Next to the Florida Mayhem taking on the Seoul Dynasty. That was an easy 4-0 win for the Seoul Dynasty. The way they clutched out Havana, though, was absolutely insane. I'm still amazed by that. Anyway, next was the Guangzhou Charge taking on the Chengdu Hunters. This is my big pick game, and unfortunately I was wrong. The Guangzhou Charge came out looking pretty good. Not amazing, but pretty good, getting the win over the Chengdu Hunters, who are looking a bit weird now that they're not running the Chengdu special, but it is what it is. And then finally, wrapping up Thursday, we had the LA Valiant taking on the Shanghai Dragons, with the Shanghai Dragons taking that one 3-1. Though I will say, possibly one of my favorite plays of the whole week was Agility's whip-shotting ding as he was about to drop his EMP, and then it whiffed on Watchpoint Gibraltar. That was a really nice play by Agilities, and I really enjoyed it. Moving on to Friday, we had the Paris Eternal, who I really had no faith in, clearly, beating the Toronto Defiant. We'll get back to the Eternal, because wow. Yeah, big win for them. Solid win for them, beating a Toronto Defiant team that is pretty solid. At least we thought they were solid. I thought they were solid. The new pieces of Sharik and Gods coming in and doing pretty well, but ultimately not enough for them to beat the Eternal. The London Spitfire beat the Boston Uprising 4-0, ran an absolute clinic on them. Wasn't even close. Spitfire, big win for them, starting off their Stage 3 well. The Houston Outlaws and New York Excelsior game with the 5 maps. I don't think anyone expected that, but the New York Excelsior did ultimately take the win on map 5, though they were very close to losing. Much like they were very close to losing to the LA Valiant in Stage 1, but New York found a way to pull it off. And finally, the LA Gladiators taking on the Dallas Fuel. Whoo, LA Gladiators, they really went in on that one, beating the Fuel. 4-0, handing them a fat L. Was not even close. So, good win for the Gladiators there. Yeah, impressive. Next, we went on to Saturday, where we had the Hangzhou Spark 4-0 the Philadelphia Fusion. Didn't get a chance to watch most of that game, but from what I did see, Spark were well above and beyond what the Fusion were. Vancouver Titans with a 3-1 victory over the Atlanta Reign. Atlanta Reign actually somewhat impressive this week in the fact that they played very well against the Shock. They played pretty well against the Titans as well. They're a team that I definitely think, with a little bit more momentum, can definitely stay in that top 12 and could even potentially go a little bit higher. But right now they're sitting at 12 in the overall standings. And I think they're a team that could be very threatening to any team above them. I think when they're playing really well, we've seen what they can do. They can beat New York. They can hold their own against San Francisco. They can play well against Vancouver. This is a team that I wouldn't be surprised if we see them in the season playoffs at the end of the season. Next, we have the Seoul Dynasty, who 4-0'd the Guangzhou Charge. So the Seoul Dynasty win all 8 maps that they played this week. Not really much else to say there. And the LA Valiant, in my big pick game, I picked against them after initially picking them because I was like, Chengdu coming in against a new main tank and a team that probably isn't going to be ready. I really, as much as I wanted to pick the Valiant, Chengdu probably got this one. Nope. Valiant won pretty handily, 4-0. Wasn't even close. So, should have just gone with my gut, but good win for the Valiant. They're a team that realistically they're not out of it, but they have some very tough matches ahead of them. They have to play the Titans again. They have to play the Gladiators again. I think they have to play the Shock again. Hangzhou. They have a lot of really tough matches ahead of them. It's very hard for them to make a push for that 12 spot. They're currently, I believe, 3 games behind, so they would need a lot of stuff to go their way for them to be able to jump up from 17 to 12, but a lot of weird stuff has happened, so hey, maybe the Valiant, maybe things could go their way. Moving on to Sunday, we have the first game of the week, or first game of the day. It was the Overwatch League's match of the week. It was my big pick game for Sunday, and that was the New York Excelsior taking on the London Spitfire. The first point on Ilios led me to the impression that this series is going to be very close, very competitive, and literally everything after that was only New York. Sabiobi on the Sombra looked much better in this game than he did against the Outlaws, though obviously Outlaws, he said in the post-game interview, I don't really practice Sombra. I never really practiced her. I just kind of played her. And then after beating the Spitfire, said he put some time in practicing her. So it was definitely noticeable. He played a lot better. And I think anyone who is still saying you have, the 1 and the 2 and then everybody else. No, it's the 1, the 2, the 3, and then everybody else. Because London is towards the top of the everybody else. And New York just beat the Gladiators and the Spitfire in, relatively recent succession pretty easily. So, New York lost to Atlanta twice, but New York's not out of this discussion of the big 3 just yet. Next, we had the Paris Eternal and the Boston Uprising. What do you know? The Eternal once again made me look like a fool beating the Boston Uprising. This is genuinely a surprise to me. I really did not expect the Eternal to have a really good week, but here we go. I think they've lost maybe both of the control maps they've played. I don't remember which one they lost against Boston, but I know they lost to Toronto in control. I don't remember if it was control that they lost to Boston. If they lost the map, I don't even remember if they lost the map or not. I think they did. And this literally just happened, but E3 is going on. Not fully into things, but yeah, the Eternal played very well. I think this new lineup is very interesting. No Shadowburn, no Soon, but Danya and Nico seem to be doing a very good job. They seem to be making this team much more competitive. Ben Best back in it, main tank is interesting. I'm really not crazy about Ben Best, but they've been winning, so obviously I could be wrong. They have kept Gray in, and of course Cruz is still there. He's never getting switched out. And Finzie's still there. So good win for the Eternal. Good week for the Eternal. I'm excited to see what they have coming up. Next, we had the Washington Justice against the Dallas Fuel. Easy win for the Fuel. Justice still just don't look good. And, I am not crazy about the Dallas Fuel. I think that they are good. Not great. I think they're in the top half, but, they've had a relatively easy schedule, I think. And I think when they play the teams that are ahead of them so far, we've seen them get absolutely obliterated. So the Fuel right now are at a position where they don't have a lot of room for failure. The Seoul Dynasty are right behind them by 1 win, and if Dallas drops a game, they're dropping a lot because Seoul doesn't look like a team that's ready to lose yet, though Seoul does have a couple tough opponents coming up. Finally, to end off the week, we had the Vancouver Titans taking on the LA Gladiators. It was competitive, it was 3-1, but the Titans ultimately walked away with the win. What's new? The Titans like to win every week. It's just what they do. So that was week 1 for stage 3. Let's now go ahead and take a look at week 2. So, first game of the week, Thursday, June 13th, we have the Houston Outlaws taking on the San Francisco Shock. Yes, the Outlaws played the Excelsior close. Doesn't matter. The Shock are going to win that one pretty easily. I don't really see any real competition there. Next, the Shanghai Dragons take on the Atlanta Reign. Dragons, of course, a team that are on the rise consistently. I really like what the Dragons have brought to the table so far. I think this is a win for them as well. The Reign are a team that are still a bit of a wild card. I was close to making this my big pick game, but I think the last game of the day is going to be potentially a really, really good game. So this one, though, I do think will be competitive as well. But ultimately, I think Shanghai, they look like a team that, are very, very close to being one of those elite teams. We just need to see them really get some of those nice big wins in and start getting that differential up and getting that record up a little bit more. Dallas Fuel taking on the Chengdu Hunters, taking the Dallas Fuel. Still not crazy about Chengdu, and I think the Fuel look better than Chengdu does. Finally, for Thursday, my big pick game is the Hangzhou Spark against the Vancouver Titans. I am taking the Titans for that one. They're the Titans. That's just kind of what they do. They play well, and that's really their thing. But I think the Spark are, of course, a really good team as well. And I think it'll be competitive. I think it'll be a good series, but ultimately I think the Titans will walk away with that one. Next, we move on to Friday. First game we have is the Paris Eternal taking on the New York Excelsior. This is my big pick game of the week. Paris are playing very well right now. New York, still, of course, New York, they're playing well as they have been for the past couple of stages. Though, of course, dropped 2 games last stage, but still looking very dominant. The Eternal, as good as they look, I still don't think they're going to be the most able team at stopping New York, but at this point in time, anyone can stop New York. Atlanta proved that. Next, we have the Toronto Defiant taking on the London Spitfire. London Spitfire, I think, bounced back from their NYXL defeat and defeat the Defiant pretty handily, though the Defiant have had a lot of time off. I still think the Spitfire are overall the better team. Next, the Boston Uprising take on the Houston Outlaws. Taking the Boston Uprising, they look like a better team than the Houston Outlaws, and ultimately, I just think that that's really all you need to know. Outlaws have played okay, but they have back-to-back games, Thursday and Friday. They have to play the Shock. You're going to have to put a lot of preparation in trying to beat the Shock. Then you go the next day against the Uprising, who don't have another game. They have the advantage of being able to have more time to prepare and get to see you play against the Shock. So the Uprising, for me, it's an easy one. Next, the LA Gladiators taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. Game that I almost wanted to make my big pick game, but ultimately I went with the first one. But this one, Gladiators Fusion, I think will be a good, solid series, but I think the Gladiators walk away with this one. They are the 4th best team in the league right now. I don't really see them dropping that position. So, taking the Gladiators to beat the Fusion. On a Saturday with the Washington Justice taking on the Hangzhou Spark. I am picking the Spark for this one. Justice are just not the most solid-looking team, and I think the Spark will win this one pretty easily. Next is the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Atlanta Reign. This is a game that I think Seoul will win. I think they will win pretty well. They're 8-0 so far on maps this stage. They didn't play the toughest opponents, granted, and I think the Reign will be the team so far that'll challenge them the most, but winning every map is difficult, no matter who you're playing against. And the fact that they've done it so far shows that this team is very solid, and they've been running all sorts of weird teams and lineups, and it's been very interesting to watch. So I like what the Dynasty are doing, so I think they have the upper hand in pretty much every category, if not every category, over the Reign, and The Reign have managed to keep their most recent games competitive, but I don't think they're going to walk away from this one with a win. Next, Dallas Fuel taking on the Vancouver Titans. That was a slaughter of a match the last time these two teams played, and I expect it to be the same this time around. I don't think the Fuel can really compete with the Titans, so I'm picking the Titans to win that one. My big pick game for Saturday is the Guangzhou Charge against the LA Valiant. Two teams near the bottom of the standings. Two teams that are looking to build upon earlier successes. The Valiant looking to improve their 3-win stage 2, maybe with a 3 to 4 win or more stage 3, while the Guangzhou Charge struggled a lot in stage 2, but they're looking to bounce back and be closer to their stage 1 form. Right now, I think the Valiant look a little bit better. I like what they have done, so I am picking the Valiant. I think Fact Fiction actually looked really good, better than I expected him to look. I really like what KSF has been doing. I think KSF is an underrated player that people unnecessarily complain about. It was one of those things where all like, KSF's not that good. And then every game they're like, wow, KSF is going off. So clearly he's a lot better than people are giving him the credit for. So I like the Valiant for this one. I'm picking them. That's what it is. Sunday, we have the match of the week, as picked by the Overwatch League, and that is the San Francisco Shock taking on the Seoul Dynasty. I think this will be a fun series, but I think the Shock walk away from this one with a win. They are still the Shock. They are still one of the top 3 teams in the league, and I think this is a game that they walk away from with a W. Dynasty will keep it competitive, I think, but ultimately, Shock are just going to do Shock things and come away with the win. Next is the Florida Mayhem taking on the Paris Eternal. I'm taking the Eternal Mayhem. I will say they are the weakest team in the league. I think most people, if not everyone, would agree with that right now. While they do look like they will get better with the changes they made to their roster, I don't think it's enough for them to beat the Eternal, who are playing well right now and are looking to build upon some success. Next is the Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Boston Uprising. Another game that almost could have been a big pick game. The Uprising and Fusion are both in really weird positions in their season. The Fusion need some more wins. The Fusion are in a position where they are struggling to stay at that top of the standings. They are the 3rd best team in the Atlantic, and they are tied with the 7th best team in the Pacific. The Pacific is really dominant so far this season, and the Fusion are falling behind a lot of those teams in the Pacific. They need to start catching up and surpassing some of those teams, and the only way they can really do that is by getting some wins against some of these teams that are a little bit lower than them in the standings, and getting some wins against some of the teams that are close to them in general in the standings. And Boston is one of those teams. So I think this is a huge game for the Fusion. I think they recognize how big of a game it is. They come out, they get the win. Finally, the last game of the week is the Washington Justice against the Los Angeles Gladiators. And this is one that I once again think goes to the Gladiators, purely based on the fact that they're a solid team, and the Justice, playing 2 games in 2 days against 2 very good teams, will not be able to keep up with these 2 solid teams. Gladiators are the 4th best team in the league right now by record. And I think by eye test as well, they're the 4th best team in the league. Though they're very close with the Spitfire and maybe even the Spark. There's a lot of kind of muddiness in that middle or high middle group. So ultimately, though, I think the Gladiators walk away with this one with the W. But we will only see what happens when we get there. But Justice, as much as I think that they have had some good moments, they still struggle with their ultimates. They still struggle against these really good teams. So Gladiators are the team I am picking. Take a look at the standings, the overall standings. As I just mentioned, the Atlantic Division significantly weaker than the Pacific Division. Pacific Division, 7 teams that are 500 or better, and they're all above 500. The Atlantic Division has 3. The others are all below 500. And it's becoming more and more apparent that the Pacific Division is a stronger division, as was predicted at the beginning of the season. Before the season started, everyone was talking about how stacked the Pacific Division is. There's so many good teams, but there was always kind of those three teams in the Atlantic that everyone thought would be competing at the top of the league. And while the Excelsior are, and the Spitfire are, Fusion not quite at that level, but they're still in the hunt. They're still in the race. They're sitting there in the overall standings, not horribly. They're in the 9 spot, so they're still fighting for that uh, tournament spot. The 7 through 12 play-in tournament. So they're not out of it yet, but just looking at how crazy it is, the difference between the performances in the Atlantic and the performances in the Pacific, it's quite a difference to look at. Yeah, it's surprising. Finally, let's take a look at the top 10 stage standings. Obviously, it's the first week, so only so much to really take a look at here. But I think the interesting thing is the Dynasty sitting there at the top, looking to have another good, solid stage. Their stage 1 was solid. Stage 2, not as solid. But I think they're hoping that they can bounce back at this stage and have a really strong showing here for the rest of the stage. But it's early. The Valiant, though, top 10. This is the first time they've been in the top 10 of any stage so far this season, so good for them. At least to my knowledge. I would assume that that's the case since they lost all of their first matches. But it's a good start for them, at least, to be in a position where their record maybe isn't positive, but their differential is. Things are looking decent for the Valiant. It's still going to be very hard for them to get to a position where they are, winning and potentially passing some of these teams that they would need to pass to get to that number 12 spot. But it's definitely not completely out of the picture. Like I said, they're 3 games behind Atlanta, who currently hold that 12 spot. The differential is definitely the Valiant's issue. But there's nothing that some decent wins against some lower level teams can do to get you into that competition and to potentially get you up into that spot. But we'll have to see what happens. Maybe they could make a stage playoffs. I think that's pretty good if you're a team that started the season 0-7. You can make a stage playoff. That'd be impressive, and that'd be a really good way to at least, at the end of stage 3, say, you know what, maybe we didn't make the season playoffs, and maybe we won't make the season playoffs, but at least we made a stage playoff. And maybe we didn't win the stage playoff either, but for a team that started winless, the fact that we were able to rally and get some wins and get ourselves into a stage playoff is a lot. But they have a tough schedule being in the Pacific Division. If they were a team in the Atlantic, I would say their chances were a lot better to make that run, but being in the Pacific means it's pretty much impossible. But we'll see what happens. But that's everything I have for you this week. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing because it helps out a lot with the channel. But I am going to get out of here. If you want more of this, obviously, let me know and give me a follow on Twitter at NTCQuinn. But that's it. Once again, thank you, and I'll see you all next time.